children and young people in their learning, development, and well-being. She works collaboratively with families, schools, and professionals to design evidence-based strategies that recognize individual strengths and needs. Passionate about inclusion, Cheng Yi extends her expertise beyond her professional role by delivering parent and teacher training, supervising junior psychologists, and supporting community initiatives that promote educational equity and mental health. She also runs social groups for adolescents with neurodivergence. Cheng Yi is an honorary fellow at the School of Education, University of Nottingham, Malaysia. In the leisure time, she enjoys cooking, baking, socializing, and outdoor activities. You're not here to listen to me speak. I'm very glad for that today. So without further ado, let's put our hands together for Cheng Yi.
Feel very shy when Stephen introduced me like that, but thank you. Because you all know me as Cheng Yi, some of us, we grew up together, and lots of people here I look up to, admire, and perhaps my teachers too. I'm deeply honored, thank you. And Stephen was a bit worried that there won't be people coming. Yeah, but I assured him that even if it's Gospel Hall people, I'm very happy to be sharing this with all of you. And to be actually, we're all journeying together on this same journey. Yeah, so so I don't have all the answers. I have to make that disclaimer to begin with. And if it's okay, I might just look down on my notes because unlike Stephen, I'm not great at speaking off the cuff. Yeah, and I hope that I will be able to end a little bit earlier today so that you all can ask questions. Yeah, about and I can see that from the demographic today, probably parents of grown children. So a bit of correction. I actually have one teenager. I'm still qualified as a mother of a teenager because my youngest is actually 16 years old, but the other two are already young adults. Being a psychologist for the last 25 years, I've definitely seen a lot of changes, shifts in behaviors, and definitely in childhood practices. And children are using computer in increasing numbers and also in increasing areas. So of course, now with my children grown up, I'm actually quite glad that when they were little, the smartphone was not invented. Of course, we had a mobile phone, and that was a convenience for all of us. I only had my mobile phone when I was able to earn money to purchase the buy one, right? I think most of us can identify with that. But do you know that more than 20 years ago, we were already talking about screen time being used at alarming rates by children? I mean, some figures around the world globally are already saying that in the Americas, 60 to 70% of children at the age of 2 are already spending 2 hours a day using online media. Or screen media. So what is it? Television, right? Don't forget, you've got the good old television. And nowadays, when I talk to children, I have to remember to not say television. Do you watch television? I have to say, do you watch YouTube or do you watch videos? Because they don't know, some of them don't have televisions at home. Yeah, so that's how the shift has been. And so they have been using, and scientists have been studying the effect of screen media on children. So video console. You remember when we were growing up, Pac-Man and all that? Yeah, so I think this is not new. But of course, these days, with a handheld device, I think the trends are becoming more and more alarming, right? And even today's data, we know that even 6 years old are using, children below 6 years old are really using screen much more than they need to because about 80% of our Malaysian parents, right, research locally, are choosing to keep their children indoors. So holidays are coming. Yeah, 86% of parents would choose to keep their children indoors because we are a bit scared these days. We are very sterile and very safe. And because of that, 50% of the time they will be going on screens. And they're not just going to be on one screen, they're going to be on 2 screens. Yeah, that means they will be having a handheld lab device and watching something at the same time, a video or something. So that's what we mean by 2 screens. Yeah, so despite that, right, the Academy of American Pediatrics, so it recommends that toddlers below 18 and 24 months should really be using no screen at all except for video uh, chatting, right? Like FaceTime and things like that. And it also recommends that children 2 to 5 years, those are preschoolers, to limit screen to only 1 hour per day, and that is only if they're using high quality programming. And we know that this is really, really hard to actually keep up with these days. We just saw Stephen, and I was empathizing with him, having a young child at home, not being able to go out, perhaps lots of rain. It's not easy to occupy them. So our screen usage far exceeds these recommendations. And why is this piece of advice so important? Why is Australia banning social media for under 16? And Malaysia also want to follow in the footsteps, right? Why are governments making the move towards a social media free childhood? Are we overreacting? Are we too late? Somebody was having a conversation with me this morning and saying maybe the harm is already done. Is banning social media a solution to the increasing violence, bullying, and mental health issues that we see in children today? Why don't we just ban smartphones altogether? Like, why don't we just, yeah, no, right? We can't. Yeah. Well, let me start with a story. So, about nearly 20 years ago, when I had my first child, a university friend was also having her baby. They were the same age. One day she contacted me when he was about 3 years old, and she shared the concern that she thinks the child has ADHD because he cannot remain still. He was climbing around, really, really rambunctious, and could not take instructions. So she admitted to me that for the first 3 years of the child's life, the son's life, she was addicted to screen. She was playing a lot of computer games. And she said, I thought I was so clever because as soon as my child can sit up, what I did was I trained him to sit in front of the television. And with the exceptions of bedtime, feeding time, bath times, he was so good. He was able to just sit in front of the television. And I was so engrossed, she was playing a game that she downloaded and she wanted to go up the levels and beat her opponents and really being a mother, staying at home. She's very good with computer things. She wanted to show that she's still of worth, and her worth has gone on to showing other people who are playing games that she can beat them in their scores. Well, I'd already been a psychologist for a few years at a time and not been a very qualified mom, just started being a mom. But with the very little I know, I was, and also added a bit of scare tactic. I told her that if you don't do something drastic right now, then you're going to have a scumbag gangster or even a drug addict for a son by the time you reach adolescence. I'm not sure whether it's because of what I said, but my friend is very clever. So she already knows what she was doing was wrong. And she did have a 180 turnaround. Yeah, thank God for that. Her son is finished college and university right now, nearly finishing. So that is a good story, isn't it? A good turnaround. So aside from the short attention span and hyperactivity, screen time has been attributed to a host of other negative physical and mental outcomes, such as reduced sleep, increase the BMI, that means obesity in children, um, and things like poorer social outcome, lower IQ, poorer reading skills, and higher risk of anxiety and depression, of course. But what is it about screen time that is actually causing these adverse effects? Are screen to be blamed for the mechanism, by which children are maybe having these poorer outcomes? Um, yeah. So screen displaces human interactions. That's the mechanism. I think the thing is we are more and more turning our eyes on screen. And so, like in the 70s, 80s, we grew up watching television, right? We never had this issue so much, okay? But as I said, 20 years ago, we already started to notice the trends. But in the 2000s, when the computer are introduced and then we have your Wi-Fi, we started to have more time on the mobile phones, and then smartphones took over mobile phones with the touchscreen interface. And by 2015, over 1 billion smartphones were sold every year. Yeah, so that's how much we are actually. That's how many smartphones out there, and how many people actually have them, including children, have personal access to handheld device. So although we are technically, have easier access to each other, but we are actually disconnected because we are spending more time on the screens. So it's because our choices over time of how we go for entertainment, how we learn in schools. Many schools, international schools especially, started using iPads for their children, and that's opens up different disciplinary issues, and yeah, and also the way we meet people. So adolescents especially enjoy meeting people online. They use it as a social time, sometimes in school and also out of school. So young people turn to social media to meet friends, and that has really substituted the human contact to a large extent. And then there's a loss of shared activities and reduced quality of definitely parent-child interactions. So it's not just the screen time per se that affects the child development, but children spend increasing time on screen, and we are not investing in their early childhood. And we're creating this what we call relational poverty, reducing relational opportunities in all corners, whether it's school, at home, or in a playground. Children bring their devices to the playground, right, and they play with each other there. Also, yeah. So my friend made the right choice when she could, and I think often as parents, grandparents, caregivers, teachers, we are we can be part of the problem, but we can also be part of that solution, right, with the choices that we make. We can be on iPhones and things and model that to our children, but children don't get it. They get it from us, right? They get it. Where do they get the devices? They get it from us. So quite often, I guess parents are asking me, should I be giving my child these devices? And one of the, I think 50% of the time, all the behavioral issues that I talk to parents about, always this idea of the screen time will always come out as a tension point, as conflict points between parent and child. And it is also one of those things. If you think back during the pandemic 5 years ago, we all went into lockdown, and the number of screen use increased so much during that time. And every time when we talk about child, mental health, if I see an adolescent with poorer mental health, and when we trace back their history, there's always a link to that period. How they were either left alone in their rooms, and some, even groomed, talking to people, children as young as 8 and 9 years old, and still having an impact today. So parents will still tell me, historically, this is what happened. And we found out about it, and we try to, make changes, things like that. Um, so, as I in my practice, many parents still think a small baby. How many of you are grandparents here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how old your grandchildren are. Yeah, but they're very cute, right? Babies and chubby. And they look like a little pesky blob. But I think most of you know here that they really require a lot of attention, right? My last child, Lily, many of you know her. She was really unlike the other two. The other two were generally quite fast learners and stuff like that. But Lily just sat and watched for 6 months. And I really just don't know what is going on with her. And I was so busy with the other two, right? One 5, one 3.5, and then Lily. That most of the time we plonk her there, and her sisters just surround her, play around her, and then we don't know what's happening to her because she couldn't move. So her gross motor skills were not as developed as the older sisters, So by the time she actually started moving, my goodness, how much she actually absorbed the surrounding and how much she's actually learned where to go, what to do. I tell you, when she could crawl and move around, my house was like a war zone, right? She just waited. She was like, wait until I could move. Yeah. So, welcome. Good afternoon. So, I wanted to say that, the truth is that the first few years of life are really the golden years of development, and much of the child's early learning has implications for later in life as well as their adulthoods. So, I don't know whether you all know this famous study uh, called the Bucharest Early Intervention Project. It's very tragic. This famous study was started in the 2000s, and in fact, if you look it up, you'll find that they are still researching it today, Harvard University, etc. How they were looking at these Romanian orphans who were institutionalized in a severely impoverished condition. And this orphanage was discovered when the communism came to an end. And sadly, the children were left in cribs, they were not given stimulation, they were left on their own, lonely, lacking mental social stimulation, they were just fed, and they were some really dirty conditions as well. And then I think what the study has found out is deprived of this, the human touch, attention and responsive care, children have failed to thrive. And this is a landmark developmental study for neuroscience. And we saw that the result of a lack of human interaction meant that these children grew up really impoverished. There was stunted growth, um, IQ lower, and some of them could not speak. In fact, they manifested autistic symptoms, because they did not have that kind of early human interaction that they needed. And some of these effects were really irreversible, despite the fact that some of these children were put in foster care. Yeah, some of the testimonies, like for a few of them who have grown up and were able to share, and I think that's how we find out a little bit more about what happened inside there. Really is quite harrowing, and you may want to go and listen to it. But the brain is a very sensitive to early environmental exposure. So what you expose a child to is really, really important. Or what you deprive a child, in this case, is also very, very important. Yeah. So we are biologically programmed to form and maintain relationship. We live, play, and work together, function together as society, and are dependent on each other for survival. And children are born to love and receive love. Can you remember when you gave birth, or your wife, or someone gave birth? What is the advice that you normally get from the midwives or the doctors? Like one of the first things you should do with your babies. Yeah, skin to skin contact. So I brought my new doggy today. So skin to skin contact, right? Yeah. So and the early attachment experience is really the first social experience a child has with a primary caregiver. So every part of our biology, even how our hormones are regulated, how our brains attends to information, how we think and develop empathy, compassion, even creativity, and how we form relationships and deal with adverse life events and stresses, is influenced by these early relational interactions. So scientists can trace back, your early childhood and your perhaps even your cardiovascular system and your chances of getting diabetes and things like that. There is a lot that goes on in the first 3 years of life, and the underlying mechanism for good physical and mental health is really connected to those early childhood experiences. So, when the parent interacts with a child, this face-to-face interaction, a lot more is happening to this little blob. The child is really taking in all this sensory information, like the sights, the sounds, the smell, right? They will know which is the mother because they can smell, and the touch of the parents, and feeling that love and security, they are really building these neural networks in the brains and they form the basis of emotional intelligence. So the more the child feel loved, the more they're able to develop the capacity to love others in return. So according to neuroscientists, our brain is really user dependent. So if you don't use it, then it doesn't develop. Yeah, it develops as a function of experience. You need to sing to your child, talk to them, read to them, play with them, include them in your daily routines, take them for walks, and don't just leave them alone for extended hours, and definitely don't leave them with a screen. They may be picking up information. It's very funny. Sometimes I meet a lot of kids, and they don't sound like their parents these days. You're very Malaysian sounding parents law, but then the kid sounds very sophisticated and they speak with a British or American accent. Do you realize that? Yeah, because they're watching a lot more YouTubes rather than interacting with their parents somehow. Yeah. Um, I think we need to treat this with compassion. So even though I share this, I do know that the pressures of life today, right? Parents, two people have to work. Both husband and wife have to work, and a lot of the childcare is actually left to other people. And thank goodness we have grandparents here today because maybe you are also part of the caregiving system. Yeah, and so we need to hear about this. Yeah. So when we choose screen over quality time for our children, we are choosing a really dangerous trajectory because we are inventing a socially and emotionally impoverished childhood. And I'm not just talking about us as parents, I'm talking about a society, how we are globally becoming more from being very community. We always say Malaysia is very community, oriented, but are we slowly become much more nuclear? We are starting to go from having a screen in the center of our home to having screens in our rooms to having individual handheld machines that we can control and nobody sees what we actually do behind the screen. So that's the nature of how we are evolving social and culturally, right? Yeah, so which really neglects God's mandates to us, that we are to direct our children in the right path so that it sets the foundation for them, and as they grow older, they will not leave that path. And to direct that path, we really need to be personally there with them, right? Creating those opportunities, showing them. And it's only through repetition and through the rewarding system of having that personal interaction, having those smiles with your baby, having those intimate moments where they feel love and warmth, that they start to develop those emotional intelligence and the character, right, in them. So we can't be too sterile and don't want to play and don't want to do things, and we really need to let our children out as well, to go and play with others. Because when Johnny goes and play, sorry, there's a John here, I should use that word, goes and play in the playground, there are a plethora of opportunities for them to really work out the interpersonal skills from the very beginning. I want to play this game, but you don't want to play it. So how do I go about it, right? I want that toy, but you don't want it. And so on. So I want to go down the slide first, but there's a bee who wants to hog the slide. There's so many things that we deprive our children. So I work with children with teenagers with social communication challenges. And it's really interesting. Like sometimes they haven't played musical chairs, they haven't played past puzzle, and the first time I actually do it with them, it's like, whoa, they don't know how to take turns, yeah, and they don't know how to take in social cues, because they haven't had that opportunity. It's always very much me, myself, my screen, right? So they have to learn that relationships are two sides, and it takes another person to show them that siblings are really good. So when parents come and they say, "Oh, only child," I always see that the only child is a little bit, underprivileged in a way, because they're worse off sometimes, not all the time. I mean, they get all the parents' attention, right? But at the same time, they don't get the sibling irritating them, yeah, which is really a good thing. Yeah, because you never share your parents, you never share your toys, you never share your space, right? And you don't learn what real life is all about. It's when your sibling is there, irritating you all the time, it makes you a better person, more resilient person. I guess this is where the parents also find it challenging because sibling rivalry is another, topic, that we can have about children developing. But this is also again the opportunity for them to interface with another people and for us to go there and show them how to actually solve problems with someone else. Um, so parents always ask me, is my child school ready? Yeah. So I want to turn that back into that question back to you. Think back about your grandchildren, your children's time. What are the milestones and transformations that you see in the first 3 years of life? Looking at the dad who's in that face. Milestones like what do you see your child developing? I mentioned one thing, talking. Yeah, definitely. First, crawling. Walking. Okay, save some for the others. Any more? Crawling. So all the motor developments, right? Steven?
Ah. Screaming.
Screaming, yeah. So using the lungs, vocalizing, right? Any other?
Say no to the parents.
Yeah, learning to say no, being defiant. Yeah, but that's also like talking, making choices, right? Knowing that we have a choice. So all those cognitive development going on. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah, dancing. They certainly once they get up and go, they definitely bop around, right, to music. Yeah, there's so much going on. In fact, the first 12 months actually is very, very important because they're listening to a lot of the sounds. In fact, you can even say that during pregnancy, when they're listening to your mother tongue, when you're talking to each other, they're already programmed to pick up certain languages faster because they're exposed to it. Because the mother speaks that language. So there's a lot of things that happen there. This pyramid, this pyramid of learning illustrates that really the bottom of the pyramid really needs to be set in place before the academic learning. So as Asians, right, we are very kanchiong about academic learning and academic achievement. And so when I get children at the age of 6 or 7 and parents say, oh, they're not reading very well, they're not writing, they're not able to do mathematics, that they don't realize that actually a lot of things happen in the first few years of life that are foundational to the academic learning. The base of the pyramid represents the sensory systems, tactile, right? So the child will reach up and grasp and play, sand, play with their food. Yeah, we get very annoyed, right, when you play with their food, but they are feeling, okay, the different texture, vestibular, so they're balanced. Yeah, when they go to the playground, they are able to climb safely and feel a sense of balance. When they play and they jump and they run and they go down the slopes. Proprioception, that's their body awareness. So young kids, if they're not very coordinated, they will bump into chairs when they're walking and bump into people. All those things are really needed before the next stage and the next stage. So like your posture control, your motor planning, sensory motor, perceptual skills, before that can be developed. Only after these foundational layers are developed, then you start to have attention. Because if your postural control is wonky, how are you going to sit in a chair to listen to your teacher? Right? You must be able to hold up your core. And to be able to write, your hands must be able to grasp the pencil and control it. And what your eyes see, your hands follow. Yeah, so it's a very much that development essentially has to be built up at the bottom first. And finally, academic learning can be effectively built upon them. Yeah. Children who are not talking, sometimes parents make the mistake that, I think they will come in time. But oral language is actually a prerequisite for reading and writing. Yeah, it starts with the child listening to the units of sound, synthesizing them, and then being able to talk, so producing sounds and words, and then from there to be able to recognize, when they hear the ABCs and the ABCs being linked together, blend to make words, and then from there to be able to recognize the written print. So all those prerequisite skills, there's so many things that happens in that early development. So the neurological processes involve many years to develop, and the most rapid development, as I said, is first 3 years. So just now we all mentioned some of these things, right? So gross motor skills starts with developing core body strength, fine motor skills like cutting, pencil skills, is dependent on your finger control. Yeah, to be able to do daily living skills. You know what is the biggest reason for schools, preschools rejecting kids? I don't know, Jackie is a preschool teacher. Do you want to guess? Mm, yeah.
Eye contact very late.
Yes. Yeah. So they're unable to sit down and control themselves, right? Yeah. And in terms of daily living skills, I'm actually thinking about toilet training. I think one is the biggest issue because if you have a class, 10 to 15 children at the age of 4 and 5, it's very hard if a child hasn't established toilet training by that time. Yeah. So it's very important that these milestones are developed. So what is school readiness? It's actually all these things. Yeah, it's very hard to explain everything to a parent when they come at 6 and the child is not school ready because they have missed a lot of their developmental milestones. So literacy and numeracy skills that begins with listening to sounds or spoken words, language and communication is dependent on interaction with others, and social interaction play skills. It begins by watching. I told you about Lily, right? She was just watching for 6 months and taking in all the information, yeah, and copying. Yeah, so we first begin by copying another person's behavior, and then we learn to explore by ourselves. And the biggest thing, emotional regulation, like what Jackie was saying, you must be able to follow instructions, to be able to sit down when you're supposed to sit, wait in line, in the queue. So it starts with attention from the primary caregiver, like I said, the early years, and feeling loved and secure. And that can only come by spending enough time with them. So of course we are not severely neglecting our children, right, by giving them the screen once a while, right? But are there any benefits actually of early online exposure? This one, a lot of people think, oh no. Okay, yes, justify. Yeah. So early literacy, like if you have good programs, it can help with early literacy, verbal skills, and language development. But remember, a lot of this knowledge, unless you put them into experience, right, the child cannot use it for problem solving, yeah, or for higher level thinking. Making social connection and support, when especially during lockdown times or when relatives are, from a distance, developing digital skills is really important for today. We cannot deny that this is where the world is going, so we must be able to use digital skills. And of course, with good programming, there's critical thinking and problem solving, and even motor skills. So some research has actually found that children who are early exposed to screen, they're very good. Their finger motions are very good, and they're not necessarily worse off in terms of their balance and their fine motor skills. So I must balance that, of course, right, by telling you that it's not all bad, yeah. But I think in our digital world, we need to be able to use technology to navigate a lot of things, right? So I want to ask you, why do we give screens to our children? Why do you give screens to your children or grandchildren, if you do? Babysitting, yeah. Okay. As a distraction, yeah. Yeah, sometimes when you have to wait a long time and they are distressed, crying, right? could be the only thing you can turn to at a time, lifesaver. Any other reasons?
As a reward.
As a reward, yeah. So, some French studies found that these are the four reasons, very close to what you have said. Entertainment, to calm them, like JJ said. Recompense, that's like compensating, maybe if you're feeling guilty, not enough time, don't know what to do with them. Also to educate them, yeah. So, yeah, I think also to reward them, it's something that you all said. But we also think that there are pitfalls, right? And I think if we choose to give screen to our children, I think we need to be prepared for it. Yeah, we need to be aware, yeah, that it's a choice that we make, and just like everything else, there are choices. And we are also creating an expectation. Yeah. So if you are used to giving them screen during meal times, then they will expect that. And they will also have tantrums if you don't give it to them because they are programmed, right, to expect that. Yeah. So again, we can be part of the problem, we can also be part of the solution. I think another pitfall of screen time that we are exposing them to potential risks that the immature brain are not yet able to handle, and there are whole host of dangers out there. Computer programs have algorithm-driven manipulations, right? So they will make us scroll continuously on things that they know we are hooked on. They study our behavior, yeah, and there's this exposure to distorted realities, and they can't tell. At a young age, they can't tell. Online grooming, pornographic, unnatural sexual content, cyberbullying. Yeah, so our children are subjected to a lot of teasing, taunting, and definitely they are exposed to unhealthy social comparisons through social media. So I am for government raising the age to 16 actually. Yeah. And many of these really goes against our societal values and our own family and values. So giving our children unsupervised screen time too early is really expecting a high level of self-control in them, having wisdom and discernment which they don't have yet. AI is growing so much faster than we can actually learn to manage ourselves. So if we cannot control it, we don't understand the system, how much more our children. Yeah. And the Bible doesn't give us specific instructions to parent or grandparent, about screen usage. But it does give us specific guidelines about discipline. And just as God disciplines us to protect and keep us safe from our own self-destruction, we are also expected to discipline our children, painful as it may be, so they too may be aware of their wrongdoings and their sin and be brought to repentance. And we do this to develop their self-control. So this was our Sunday school motto, right? A few years ago, Auntie Sao Gwen. Yeah, Galatians 5:22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And against such things, there is no law, so you can do it as much as you want. And sometimes, we give phones to our children because we don't want them to kacau us, right? When we are also on screen. So developing this patience and the fruit of the Spirit is also something that we all need to do. So just trivia questions to all of you. Which of these, right, require self-control? Uncle William and Collins. The small group. All of them. Yeah. All of the above, right? Yeah. So you can see that even small things in life, in school, yeah, and exams, and even when you start to grow up, go to work, break up with girlfriend, boyfriend, all these things really require self-control. And you can have great academic skills, yeah, but there's a lot of things you can't solve without self-control. Yeah, that academic skills cannot help you to solve. So in summary so far, I think we've talked about how exposing children too early to screens, we create an impoverished relational environment and we risk their relational health. we are depriving them of their brains of nourishment that is required to grow up to be physically, emotionally healthy adults. And we are also exposing them to material that they are too young to handle. So, what is the right age then for us to give screen to our children? Any opinions? Yeah, their own phone. Yeah. Got a few parents here. Look at my friends. I think most of our children are teens already have phones. I personally do not think that our children are ready to have their mobile phones under the age of 12. And this is really backed up by research data. And I have friends that actually hold out even longer to 16 and 18. And it's really not easy. It's really horrible. Every day you get, you know, all sorts of, I've been there as well. Although I caved in at 14. You're the worst parent on the block when that happens. So I think we know that 12-year-olds who own a smartphone, 30% of them have higher odds of depression, 40% of them higher odds of obesity, and 60% higher odds of insufficient sleep compared to their friends without a smartphone. And in Malaysia, the rate of anxiety and depression among them are increasing at an alarming stage. Yeah, so this is statistics from the National Mental Health and Mobility Survey 2023. Nearly half having thoughts of self-harm or suicide. It's most prevalent from ages 16 to 29. Those are adolescent and young adult age. And 1 in 6 children are also likely to suffer from mental health problems. And I want to share here, adolescents are aged between 10 and 20 years, basically. Right? And you can see that the trend is really going down, it's going up in terms of the number of depression, loneliness, suicide ideation, suicide plan, and suicidal attempts. But what are the protective factors? So if you have peers, if you have friends, so that's our relational peers. If you have a parental relationship, a parental bond, right? But we can see the trends are also decreasing in terms of the parental relationships. Teenagers are reporting less parental relationships opportunities. So adolescents don't develop these mental health problems overnight. The choices we make when they're still young, when they're still under our care, still living under our roof, really makes a difference. We need to build relationship with our children so that they have a strong sense of who they are and give them a strong sense of purpose that will build their self-esteem. So let me nearly end with a story. So the other day, I had a mother who came with her teen daughter. She's 18 and she has very low self-image. Used to cut herself, but she has stopped. And she wanted me to speak to her and have some guidance in her life. So I asked the mother, how do you want me to help her? What do you want me to do? What's my goal as a therapist? And she said, I just want her to have a purpose in life. So I turned and asked her, what is your purpose in life? She was stunned. I don't think she was prepared. She thought I was working with a child and not her. But I think it does make me think, what are our purpose in life? Because if we don't have a strong direction, then our children as well, it will translate, it will reflect on them too. Yeah. So I wonder, this mother didn't have a clear answer. She didn't have a goal or direction for her life, or her daughter's life. What about you? Yeah, what are we building our foundations and values on? So as Christmas approached, I think we are also reminded that we were all once cut off and disconnected from our God. And that's also a kind of relational poverty. And just like screen isolates us from people, from our parents, sin isolates us from God. But God cannot bear that separation, can He? And so he made the first move to restore a relational health by coming down to us as a baby boy. And the Bible in John 3:16 shares that, for this is how God loved the world. He gave us his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him would not perish but have eternal life. Earlier you heard me say that we are made to love and to receive love. And that capacity to love really comes from God. God is love, and we are made in his image. And God himself is the greatest example of how a parent loves their child. And God demonstrated his fatherly love for us by sending us the best gift, the gift of his Son, so that he made the choice to be with us. And it's certainly not God's plan for us to be spiritually impoverished. We have a relationship with our Creator. We are made to have a relationship with our Creator. And when we are separated from God because of our sin, we are also choosing a dangerous trajectory. Because when we are disconnected from God, we are often restless, purposeless, and aimless too. And we are like spiritual orphans. And when we choose to accept Jesus, we become a child of the King. We sang this song this morning. And the Spirit of God enters our heart. He begins this lifelong work of transforming our minds. So however messed up our neurobiology is, however we are been absorbed in screen or make mistakes, however anxious or depressed we may feel, then God can take that all. He is light, and in him there is no darkness. And when we ask God into our lives, he really illuminates every part of us and showing us every corner that we need him, and we can only repent and come to him, and he will help us do it. So I just want to end with this illustration about the values that we sow in our children, the seeds. So you can see the values are like foundation of a house, right? The stronger the house is because of the strong foundation. And the values that we have influence our beliefs. What are beliefs? What is thought to be true? And finally, our beliefs will impact our attitude towards lives and towards everything that we encounter every day. So if we are rooted in Christ, and we know who we are, that we are a child of God, then whatever we encounter, whether the bullies or people tell us different things, distortions, deceptions, we know to ignore it because we know those things. We are able to discern when we have God with us, when we have Christ to illuminate and to show us the way. So we hope that we will all choose Jesus, the rock, to build our houses on as our foundation for our families. And when we build our house upon this rock, as Jesus, he will direct us and our children, so that we're setting up strong foundations and we can withstand any storms in life. Amen? Amen. Pass the time back to
Thank you. Oh, no, don't pass time back to me yet. Let's have some time of questions and answers for not every time we get to have Jackie to speak to us on this topic from a perspective of an expert. So if many of you have children, grandchildren as well, so if you have any questions for Jackie, please just raise your hand. I'll pass the microphone to you.
maybe it takes a while to get
Yeah,
going.
I want to get more in. So I have a question. So we try not to give our kids the phone, right? But then we have to be on the phone, alright? Have to. But sometimes we have to, but also because we also got commitment, right?
I mean, you all were looking at the screen the whole time, right?
Yeah, okay. So especially when during the pandemic, right? I mean, there's no way that we could people function at home, working from home, so we are always on the screen as well. So we try to say, hey, you can't have the screen. About that amount is also there scrolling.
So what is the answer, right?
Yeah.
If I said earlier, it's not that screen per se lah that is causing the problem. It's the relational poverty. So I think there's time for everything. I mean, in the past, I was trying to think what is the equivalent of screen time, right? When I was growing up, what did my mother? How did she spend her time? Yeah, she would read a newspaper. They all used to read newspaper. And sometimes you can be really, really engrossed. And some of us are using the screen to read news these days. So we're using it as a tool, right, for our information. And it's just that it is a screen, but our children don't see that, don't necessarily see that. Yeah. So I think if we make time for them and set certain boundaries so that they understand why, when you're working, or maybe you should not do certain things, certain habits like screen time during meals. Okay, so certain communal time, I would say try to avoid using screen and make them as a social and interaction time. I mean, it's only once a day. Most of us go to work, so it's only that once a day, right? So how about setting up certain boundaries, certain good habits? Not to say that you don't use screen at all, but there is some kind of boundaries or limits and way of doing it. Okay. So my favorite question.
Because of the pervasiveness of all this media, how do we, at a very early age, get children to books?
So one of my favorite questions I like to ask parents when they say, "How do I get my children to read?" is I ask them back, "Do they read?" Most of the time they say no, and then they say, "Look, I have 2 jobs. I have to do this. I come back like 7, 8 o'clock at night, and I really have no time to read." Yeah, actually, our children don't need a lot of reading time. It's just the regularity and the consistency. So, like when they're young, I think many preschool would start to teach them the ABCs and the sounds, and they will bring back, simple picture books. And how long does it take? Maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The child's attention span when they're 3, 4 years old is very short. Yeah, but it starts there. But go even earlier. I think reading to your child. When is the child ready to listen to you read? As soon as they can sit up and hold the head up. So I used to have my girls sitting on my lap from 3 months actually, because they are ready, right? And I would read to them. Yeah, so and that can be done. It doesn't have to be. I think all of us have different lifestyles, different jobs. I was quite blessed because at that time my job was very flexible, and I chose actually to stay at home more often with the kids. So I used to do that. So that I can testify that they can start listening to books already from that age, and they will grow to love it because it is a lifestyle. Yeah. So when we returned from the UK, we were there when the children were small and came back here. I was quite sad that we had very little libraries. Yeah. So when I was in the UK, I made it a point to go to the library every week, once a week. Yeah. And they will come back and take a book, and we have people reading to the children. So are they looking for opportunities like that? I know some schools, they have people coming in to read with the children, and they look out for volunteers, retirees, to read to our children. Because the literacy level in our children in Malaysia is actually quite low, especially in the public schools. Yeah. So I think what they become a reader is through practice and through exposure, and we have to model to them. And the other thing is, I feel very sad whenever I ask parents when they ask me the question, how to get my child to read. I ask them, what books do you have at home? Don't have. Don't have also. Yeah, so it's very sad. So you need to intentionally place things around the home. And I can testify to that as well. I've got 3 girls. Sometimes I just put things, good things like origami, which I thought, maybe one of my daughters would be interested. I just so happened to see it on sale, it looks interesting, I just buy it, no purpose, put it there. One day, the book will be taken, and then I have, wow, origami over the house. So I think you have to be very intentional, put good things around the house, and that's how your children absorb it.
My friend's niece starts to react to the parents following the videos that she watches, reaction like hold the pram and try to pretend that she's a very blue, jump, and exactly like that. How do we know when the child has already reached a point of now is no more screen time? You should really just reverse. Yeah. What's a warning? What are warning signs? Yeah.
First, you follow the Academy of Pediatrics American guidelines. I mean, if they're having more than, it sounds like a young child, right? More than 1 hour on screen, that's too much. And if the child is doing that, it's very normal. I think you need to realize that they will copy things. And they will copy good things, like learn new words. And they will also copy bad things. Yeah. And it's hard for them to distinguish at that time. And if it works, because why are they doing that? Because they're controlling their parents. And if they can control the parents, even make the parent turn the face, right? You already got an attention from the parents. It's very hard to break that behavior, undesirable behavior, because unfortunately we are the reinforcers and enablers. So when we don't spend time with our children, and when they are playing nicely, so quiet, right? I can go and do my stuff. That's actually when you should go and actually interact with them and say, well done, I can see that you're doing this. Oh, what did you make? Because when they are born, they will somehow find ways of amusing themselves or doing something to get our attention. But unfortunately, that's when we go running into them. Yeah, so we've enforced that they are by giving them negative attention. So holding your breath will definitely get a parent's attention because that's life threatening. Yeah, children have passed out because they hold their breath until to get parents' attention. If I don't get their attention this time, I'm gonna hold even more. So whether or not they are doing, I think I can also see that with some parents they say, oh, I stop screen or whatever. I can see an improvement in their children, their ability to attend, listen, and follow instruction because their attention is no longer divided.
Would you say that what advice having children is a lot of work and it's a responsibility. So I think if we bring children into the world, then I think it's our responsibility to make sure that I wouldn't say successful and then get all those top careers, career and that kind of thing, but just to be able to manage in the world. Because I think the world is becoming more and more challenging. So there's no joke. So seriously, it's not just making babies, but to be able to bring them up.
So we need to be more connected. I think as a society, we are not so connected. I think parents these days really need that community with other people supporting them. So that, I think burning out and having the pressures of life, as I say, we need to approach this with that love and compassion and understand circumstances. But at the same time, how do we help young parents, right, to make good choices for the future of our generations? Yes. So I think we play a part where we can.
This is just a comment, right? In the past, people have asked me, what was the most difficult part of parenting? And I find actually like disciplining the children probably the most challenging and most emotional, actually aspect of parenting. Of course, now when you talk about discipline, people think of pain and punishment. but they're basically teaching self-regulation, self-control, self-regulation. Yeah, so that aspect is the hardest part. In terms of providing for the children in other ways, I mean, say you have clothes, whatever, that's no problem. Helping them with self-regulation, that is the hardest part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you that a question? So what part of it is most difficult for a parent in terms of disciplining?
Because you have to engage with them, time, time. Looking at the behavior, confronting them with the kind of behavior, advising them, helping them to realize what is the right thing to do. You're basically interacting with them all the time.
Yeah. Do you mean to say like it's knowing like what to say, how to do it, and giving of your time and your attention to it, that means putting aside things. Yeah. I actually think right, it's hard because of ourselves. Yeah. To be able to regulate, I think it takes two sides. It's like a dance. In psychology, we call it attunement. We need to be in tune with the person, right? So if that person is angry, emotionally, aroused, right, high, we cannot be angry because that's just going to be clashing. Yeah, nobody's going to listen. Both are shouting. Yeah. So it's very difficult to continue being that calm because the child is always angering us with their actions. And like I said, they will only escalate higher and higher because they can always win if they go. So if I scream, you don't give in, I'm going to throw something. If you don't give in, I'm going to hit someone else. Right? Then what are you going to do as a parent? Especially when we say we don't use punishment or physical force, we are left with very little choice. Yeah, but nowadays. Yeah, so because you all are that generation, right? JJ, would you? You see, the generations are very different. Because what we are hearing nowadays is they do not want to harm and do trauma. So it's gentle parenting. So it's very conflicting when we have the intergeneration sitting together. Can I just make a quick advertisement because Jackie and I, we are planning a March parenting seminar. And all the things that you all mentioned today are the topics that we have picked to provide workshops for you. Yeah. So please come.
Let us couple. The first one is just now you say, let's just say you impose no devices during mealtime, right? Now if you eat at home all the time, that's great. But whenever we go out, I'm not sure about you. Have you ever seen a restaurant and nobody's looking at the phone? In the whole restaurant, right? Everybody, right? And other children also, right? And so then my daughter will ask, how come that other girl can watch YouTube while eating and that? Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I think there are different tiers of things you can do, right? Because parents, we all have a toolbox, right? We start with this. So maybe depending on the length of your dinner, right, you have different things. First of all, right, I wouldn't choose a very busy or a restaurant I have to wait very long, if you can. If you have a child that is very difficult, I would choose the restaurant that I know my child can handle, quiet or whatever it is. Okay, so first, parental choice, right? I have a choice. So I might make that choice. Okay, if it doesn't work, your friend, you're eating dinner or whatever, then what's the next tool that can you bring up? Right? Maybe your child likes to play Lego, your child likes to draw, So it really takes a bit of inventiveness on our part, intentional thinking on our part, and planning. Yeah. So we need to have that. And then if really, third layer, certain amount of time, this is going to go on for the next 2 hours. Okay, maybe we've agreed rules beforehand. I always think that in every behavior, there's always before, during, after one. So you always tell me, this happened. Yeah, but what happened before? Right? If you've never established the rules, then you cannot punish the child because you never make clear, it's your problem. The child is new to this world, right? But you know all the rules, right, as an adult. So you need to make the rules first. We are going to Yima's house. Please don't touch all her ornaments. She got a lot of ornaments, okay? So you cannot avoid, you have to go and visit Yima. Can you tell Yima to put away some of the ornaments or not because you're an ADHD child? Okay, Yima is very understanding. Maybe she will. If not, you still have to be obligated to visit, right? So what can you do? Can you avoid certain things? Can you bring some distraction? So I think we have choices and we have to try and think of different choices to make our parenting also easier because we are the one going to go mad, right? We always have to deal with the child. Yeah, so
Okay, and here's the second one. I got a 6 years old and I got a 3-year-old both girls. And so they have a very different personalities, but also requirements when it comes to screen, right? Because at certain age, 0 screen or an hour, but above a certain age, that is a different thing altogether, right? The 6 years old, the whole kindergarten is talking about Unicorn Academy, and right, so there's no way that she doesn't watch the Unicorn Academy. And the other thing would be there are programs that's useful for her. So we're thinking, should we get an iPad that is restrict to only these particular use? But the 3-year-old won't understand that, and what does they get, and then she doesn't get, and big fight over it, right? So, so you're a parent of 3 kids, but of course not during the same age as right now, the pervasiveness of it. But if you were to have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, how would you structure it?
I think it has to be developmentally appropriate. So a 3-year-old will not have the kind of understanding or self-control for certain things. Yeah. So I think it's not easy. Yeah. And life is not fair anyway, right? To begin with. Yeah. So but I think you need to think of developmentally what is appropriate, and I think all of us go through that. We all have to go through that because we don't all have like my sister-in-law triplets all at one time, right? Yeah, so all our children of different ages have to go through that and explaining to the next one and the next one. It is part of life. It's tough, but they have to learn to understand it to a certain extent. But also you can choose different activities to occupy them for a short while. But no easy answers for that, Stephen.
So no silver bullet there. Okay. So good. Okay, happy everyone. One more last one. Okay, that's the last one.
I think that gadgets are not your fault. Gadgets are the programs. What do you think is the content of the programs that make it so addictive or so stimulating or overstimulating to both children and adults?
So, as I said, the algorithms and the games are intentionally made to hook you, and there's different levels, right? So you go to this level. It's like watching a Korean movie with cliffhanger, right? So you must pay the next thing, and they know that if they sell it, just like McDonald's, if they sell it to one kid, the other kid will want to have it. So I think peer pressure, advertising, to make children want to have it. We've seen that everyone is on it. Why can't I do it? Right? I think that's one of the things, and it's dopamine. So the reward center. So why I'm talking about the relational, the need for relational opportunities is because we reward one another. So when I look at you, I smile. I get rewarded. Yeah. So when kids don't get the relational award, the dopamine comes from the screen. And there are all sorts of mechanisms that psychology that we use to hook a child in. When you see a child cannot get the screen right, what does it look like to you? Shock? Withdrawal symptom, like a drug addict. Yeah. So it is the same mechanism like gambling and all that. It is addictive. The people in Silicon Valley, they are very good.
They have full-time PhD psychologists on staff to design their programs.
So what the government is doing, making them responsible, is a good thing. Because they should be responsible because they're making lots of money from this.
Oh, yes, sure. Warm up. Get this place back.
I think the discipline of the child is almost long.
Yeah, right.
they see right nowadays got this killing, all this thing, because the last time we got public punishment in front of school. Now no more. That's why you see all the kids not scared.
Yeah. But you have majority parents that will be having an outcry lah, right? So how do we meet all these different needs and different opinions? It's very hard, what is the right thing to do. There are also cases of people overusing their power. So kids have been abused. We welcome our shelter children right into our church. Yeah, they are victims too of people using harsh force or neglecting them. So just saying that we need to cane children or being harsh and violent, using corporal punishment like we used to before, is not necessarily the right answer also. Because we have the other side of the coin, people overusing it.
Why are children so fragile nowadays?
Why do you think? I'm going to open it back to the public, to the audience.
They can't even stand a little bit of correction. Not necessarily caning, even verbal correction also they can't take it. What causes this? We used to be tougher.
Strawberry generation.
Strawberry generations, no fake generations. Yeah. So just between my eldest and my youngest is 5 years difference. And I could actually see the childcare, the way parents are. From somebody who's had an older child, maybe I can see the difference. Parents are helicoptering more. We hear the word helicopter parents. Yeah, they're definitely faster to make noise if they see injustice, or they perceive injustice done to their children. Right? If a teacher be overly harsh, scolding or whatever. Yeah, so I think because children see their parents reacting that way, it's very confusing. The messaging that we're giving our children is very confusing. So is the teacher right to scold me? Yeah, my mommy was not happy with it. Yeah, it's a very conflicting thing. Which one do they believe? Of course, my mommy is right. But I also know in my head, actually, I did something wrong that my mommy didn't know. I only tell half the story, right? So, child gets away. What does child do? Try it again the next time, right? They never learn their lesson. So I think there are a lot of factors. It's multifactorial, but it's the way that society has evolved in. So we need to bring back a lot of good old traditional things that we used to do with our children and reduce the screen time. Yeah, basically that's the message today.
Alright, thank you very much. Give us maybe
A very lively audience.
right. Just